I'd say most people these days are completely wired to chase cheap dopamine. In this video, I want to give you the awareness, not only around why you're right now wired in the way that you are, but ultimately give you the awareness to then change how you're wiring your brain moving forward so that you're not going to just be chasing cheap dopamine and you can actually start to put real effort in to get real rewards. Why should you listen to me? Why should you even watch this video and take in what I'm saying? Well, ultimately, I teach and preach this to clients. But not only that, when I was younger, good 5 years ago now, 6 years ago now, 7 years ago now, around that period of time, I used to be wired for cheap dopamine, completely wired for it. I couldn't put any effort in to get any big results. And ultimately, it led me down dopamine holes to the point that I'm at today, where that doesn't really exist in my life. I would be a liar to say that there's no cheap dopamine hits. I don't watch any reels or any. I think that's actually impossible these days to avoid that because you'll get people sending them to you if you don't do it yourself. Even clicking through stories can be something that gives you a bit of dopamine. And I think every single person, if they were to put their hand up and be authentic, everyone struggles with dopamine and chasing these cheap rewards. But I want to give you in this video the awareness and the power to move forward and stop this happening in your life. Let's get started. Okay, so the first concept, I think it's a police or ambulance. Hopefully everyone's safe outside if you heard that in the background. But ultimately, I want to open you up to a concept, and that concept is called the law of cause and effect. You can use this in a few different contexts, but I want to use it in this context today to allow you to understand exactly why you're wired in the way that you are. And the law of cause and effect states that for every effect, there is something that has caused that. And ultimately, I want you to become aware that the way you're wired right now is a direct cause of how you're wiring it. So let's look at it like this. So cause and effect. So whatever happens up here dictates what happens down here. And I want you to think about yourself and use this concept. You right now, you are an operating system. Your brain, your body, but we're talking about your brain in this context. So think about you are the operating system here. Just thinking operating system. And basically, how you operate will be dictated by how you're wired. And what I want you to reinforce is we are consistently updating and wiring this operating system by the things that we do, the actions that we take, the environments that we're in, the things that we consume. We're always updating and changing how this operating system is wired at every single second in time. Every single second in time, you're experiencing life as a new version of that operating system. So that means that every single second that you go through life and do something different, you're wiring this in a different way. Hopefully that makes sense. So ultimately, I want you to think about it like this. How it is wired will dictate how it operates. So how you're wiring it dictates how it operates. Think about it like this. If you are consuming cheap dopamine, if you're consuming cheap dopamine or you're getting cheap dopamine hits, and it could be from sex, could be from porn, weed, any other drug, scrolling. Doesn't need to just be scrolling, it could be anything. Any kind of cheap dopamine, you're wiring this operating system in a way, right, to have no effort and a reward. That's how you're currently operating. You're operating in a way that you want all the reward with no effort. And understanding that you right now are doing things that are creating this operating system to operate in the way that it is the first step. That first step that you're taking here is by creating the awareness. That awareness is where you gain the control. And ultimately, without that awareness, you're not ever going to make the change. So let's rub this off. But you can understand from the concept of the cause and effect that you are right now doing things that are causing you to operate like this. There's no magic thing that you're missing or anything that's like, it's as simple as that. Whatever you're doing up here, the cause is creating the effect. So however you're wiring this operating system is changing how it operates. So the first thing that I want you to do when it comes to using this awareness is I want you to do a dopamine audit. I want you to do a dopamine audit. So I want you to ask yourself, where do I get dopamine from? Ask yourself that question. Where do I get dopamine from? Again, porn, scrolling, sugar, the gym, positive things as well. So you want to go positive and negative. List these dopamine sources. Where do you get them from? And then I want you to give them a certain amount of points. So I want you to then start off with 100 points. And you've only got 100 points. And I want you to assign them to the positive and the negative. And I want you to be honest. The most important part about you doing this dopamine audit is that you're being very honest. So you list where you're getting these sources from. Cool. Assign 100 points to these sources. So let's think about it. Let's think about imagine you've got porn, you've got weed, and you've got the gym, and then you've got work, and then you've got relationships. So I want you to assign these 100 points to each of these. And what this is going to do is going to cause you to have these trade-offs. You're going to have to make trade-offs. Because if you're really honest with yourself, when you're scoring these points to whatever source that you're coming from, if you know that you're watching porn quite a lot, as a guy might, or you're smoking weed quite a lot, or you're scrolling quite a lot, for example, maybe you assign that 20 points. Maybe you assign the weed 20 points. You've just taken up 40 points, and then you've got 60 here, but you can also go again, maybe you've got other things in here, maybe you've got, again, different things that are giving you good dopamine sources, even like, again, you could even be like reading a book, going a walk, anything like that. So you start to list these. So the gym might give you 20, but then work might give you 5. Relationships might give you 5. Reading might give you 5. Going a walk might give you 5. And then you can start to see how out of balance your current dopamine, your current wiring, what you're doing here, how that looks. How does that look? Your dopamine audit shows you that you're getting a lot more dopamine from these negative sources that are giving you cheap dopamine than the sources that are giving you real rewards but require a little bit of effort. So that's the first step. You do a dopamine audit, you understand where all these things are coming from, and ultimately that awareness now puts you in a position of power to take control over this. You can actually start to think, right, cool, now that I'm aware of these dopamine sources, now that I'm aware of exactly what's going on and where that is coming from, you're in a position to start to change it. So now I want you to do this. This is what I want you to practically do now. So after you become aware of that, all the dopamine sources that are in your life, I now want you to become aware of this. This is the next step. This is what you do now. So you now map out, where does your future dopamine sources coming from? So what is your future wiring, and then how do you then operate in the future ideally? So ideally you're going to get real dopamine. You're going to put effort in. Perfect. What is that going to lead to? Getting results. Right? Again, like rewards that mean things. If you're operating like this, you're going to be able to put effort in. Right? You're going to be motivated. You're going to be driven. Right? All these things. That's how you're now going to operate. Now that you're starting to wire it with real dopamine, that effect will be you're getting more results. You can now put effort in. You're now more motivated. You're now more driven. And ultimately, you're going to get more results. You're going to stop feeling like things are hard. You're going to stop shying away from putting effort in. You're going to actually start to get able to do things that are going to require a bit of effort, but are going to give you real rewards. And it's all because you became aware of how you're currently wiring your operating system. Then you became aware of, right, cool, what does the ideal operating system look like? Well, it looks something like this. Getting results, putting effort in, being motivated, being driven. And once you outline that, you can start to then completely outline your ideal sources of dopamine that are going to give you the right sources that you need, then allow you to then wire your operating system in a way that allows you to operate and then get the results and show up as you should. And I want to make this even easier for you. I want you to go into the bio, click one of the little links. That's going to have a link to a document, a free document that you can use to audit your dopamine, a dopamine chart. And you can then lay out your current dopamine sources. You can then lay out your future dopamine sources and create the powerful awareness that you need to change how you're operating and how you're wiring your operating system. Because ultimately, this isn't going to change until you take action. Your first action to rewiring your brain and getting the right dopamine and rewiring it to actually put effort in to get the rewards is by clicking that link in the bio and filling out the dopamine chart and creating that powerful awareness. And even better than that, there's another link there if you want to work one-to-one with me. These are things that are inside my success system, because ultimately, if you can control your dopamine, if you can become aware of how you're wiring your operating system, you can start to take control of your actions, your consistent behaviors. What does that then allow you to take control of? The results in your life, the outcomes, because the outcomes are a byproduct of your consistent behaviors, and your consistent behaviors are a byproduct of how you're wiring your operating system. So until the next YouTube video, I appreciate your time and attention, and do the dopamine audit, because you definitely need to.